What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Crypto Mavericks podcast. I'm your host, Brian. You know my amazing co host, Joe. And we have a great guest here for today. It's Avinash. He is the CEO, he's the founder of Weilliptic, doing some big things in the AI space. Really happy to have him on the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, great to be here.
So we were talking a little bit about the AI world, a little bit about the crypto world before we jumped on, but before we dive deep in what you've built and all things Weilliptic, would love to know a little bit about your background. How'd you get into this crazy world of crypto and AI?
You know, I'll keep it short because I've been around the block for a long time. To keep it really simple, uh, I've been doing systems for about a couple of decades now. My first kind of foray into systems I was one of the guys who co-invented the Dynamo system in Amazon. That was way back, probably 2004 to 2007. And then I was the inventor of Apache Cassandra as an early employee at Facebook. Ran that for some time, and then 2012, I founded my first company, which was Hedwig. Hedwig, as in the owl of Harry Potter. What we built there was a distributed storage system that could basically span disparate cloud environments, including private data centers, and gives you kind of this platform that looks ubiquitous but kind of seems local to the consumer. Did that for some time, and we got acquired in 2019, just before the pandemic, by Commvault, and stayed on with the acquiring company for about 3 years. Had a beautiful experience trying to which actually kind of fed into what I was going to do subsequently, and kind of left I think during November of 2022. Spent some time trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, and floated Weilliptic summer of 2023.
Awesome. So what problem did you see in the AI space that you wanted to start Weilliptic?
It's not necessarily AI. I didn't see it through the lens of AI, but the way I looked at things, and it all comes from having a lot of systems background. And when you say systems, it's not about just reading a few papers and understanding what it does, but it's more about having built them and having run them at a reasonable scale to understand what are the pitfalls that could actually occur and how you could take those learnings and weave it back into the architecture to make sure that your systems get more and more profound and more reliable, so to speak. So the problem that I looked at was, when you look at an enterprise, and let's start with the enterprise because it makes a lot of sense here. You can categorize an enterprise into two groups, IT and business. Okay. Now, there's a lot of inefficiencies in the enterprise that I believe really need to be addressed. So let's take the inefficiency from an IT perspective. What's the job of an IT individual? Anyone in IT, their fundamental job ought to be to provide technological solutions to business problems. Okay. Now, what happens when you ship these applications, you are now forced to think about things that are kind of orthogonal to the actual business problem you're solving. Things like cybersecurity issues, infrastructural issues, systems complexity, data sovereignty, audit logging, et cetera, et cetera. And these are kind of like repeating trends across every application that you potentially ship, right? What if something could be done where all those problems that I deem orthogonal to the actual business problem can be abstracted away and delivered through a platform where these attributes become intrinsic to the platform? Then what have you actually enforced? You have now made IT just think about what they need to build rather than how they need to build it, if that makes sense. Okay. Now let's flip to the business side and look at the inefficiencies that exist over there. What do business guys typically do? They seek answers in data that's locked in enterprise grade systems like a Snowflake or a Salesforce or an SAP or any kind of a database that they might be running, or even any proprietary system that they have built within the enterprise, right, that they are working for. Every time they don't know how tables are laid out. They don't know the relationships between the tables. They may all not be SQL experts. So they always keep going back to IT and burdening IT with how to author these SQL in order to kind of get the answers that are locked in these systems. AI is an excellent fit over there. Why? Because you can now enable these guys to use natural language to ask these questions and have, of course, there's a lot there are a lot of things that kind of bolster this, but you can use AI to do the SQL, et cetera, get the necessary information, do multi-step processing if it needs to talk to multiple disparate systems and fetch these answers and give it to them. You have now reduced a problem that could typically take the order of days, sometimes even months, to what I would define as chat speed, you know? And I looked at this and I felt like there's inefficiencies across the board, and I believe something fundamental could be done. And that's what Weilliptic is all about, if that makes sense. How we address these inefficiencies in an enterprise holistically and not with point solutions.
That's a great breakdown and some great analogies. I love how you broke it down from the business side of things and obviously the IT side of things. So in simple terms, just tell the audience, what is Weilliptic?
Sure. So foundationally, why Weilliptic exists is to solve these very inefficiencies that we believe exist in the enterprise, right? And in order to do that, we came up with two solutions, one depending on the other. Okay. So foundationally, what we built is we have a platform called Whalechain, which is a globally distributed sharded blockchain. And we can get into the details later. But what it enables you to do is, and the way we looked at this was we looked at it initially from a very naive standpoint. How can we bring some serious scalability in the blockchain environment? Okay. One thing I realized is that kind of blockchain became synonymous with crypto. And I think that was a great disservice to blockchain itself as an architectural artifact. And we felt like perhaps it's time to decouple that, you know? And if you are able to build a globally distributed blockchain, which is sharded, and the sharding has a lot of important roles other than just scalability, you can control data sovereignty. If you look at most of the blockchains today, there's no data sovereignty at all, in the sense that your data could be spread all over the place. And in the current geopolitical environment, that's exactly what you do not need, if you know what I mean, right? So if you are able to spin up these shards where you can dictate which geographical boundaries they need to exist in, data sovereignty is kind of intrinsic to the actual platform, if that makes sense, right? So foundationally, what we built was this blockchain environment. And we provided a quote unquote smart contract framework. We call it applets, and for a reason, because what we mean by applets is you can deploy entire applications on top of this Whalechain platform. And you can basically address all the inefficiencies that I had articulated that IT typically faces and all those orthogonal problems that they tend to solve. Like, for example, cybersecurity issues taken care of because it's built on a cryptographically secure platform. Data sovereignty built in, audit logging built in, data persistence built in. In fact, we call this is a concept that, this is again one more thing that's going to disclose my age. A lot of people don't talk about this term. It's called orthogonal persistence, where, if you look at I'm going to digress a little bit. If you look at a lot of these AI frameworks, they provide you all these different kind of hooks. Oh, this is how you connect to a relational database. This is how you connect to Mongo. This is how you connect to, S3, or this is how you connect to a file system. And they actually wear it as a badge of honor. I actually think it's the other way around. You're giving people too many choices, and they're going to get confused. So what if you could provide a very simple interface where everything looks like one is programming against in-memory structures, and the platform can intrinsically take care of persistence for you? And because it's deployed on a Whalechain, on a blockchain-like environment, fault tolerance is also built in. So if you're able to think, now you force people to just think about how they need to build their applications. I mean, of course, they use our SDK to do so. and bundle it in a specific way and deploy it. And all these orthogonal problems are taken care of for you, right? So foundationally, that's what the Whale Chain platform delivers for Weilliptic. And as a showcase of its capabilities, what we decided to do was to build a AI chatbot, which we call Icarus, that is completely deployed on the Whale platform. And when I say completely deployed, I mean everything from, if you go to ChatGPT or if you go to Anthropic, it's basically a web page, right? You have HTML, JavaScript, and they do all this chat history, persistence, everything. We basically do all that on chain. Okay. And it was a showcase of how an AI application could actually be built and deployed on chain, where you can leverage all these beautiful properties that I had articulated as inefficiencies that IT folks typically encounter. And we bring that to the business folk so that they could use natural language to unlock information or self-serve data that's locked in enterprise grade systems or any proprietary system that exposes an API. Because you can easily, there's a lot of visualization and mapping that I do and let me give you an analogy. If you look at a smart contract, which is everyone understands smart contract in the crypto world, what is it? It's basically a contract that you expose that you can look at, okay, what are all the capabilities of this contract? And then there are mechanisms to go execute them, right? Now let's flip over to the AI world. If you look at a term that's become extremely viral right now, that's MCP. You can define an MCP server. What does it do? It has a bunch of capabilities. You can actually deploy it on chain and expose those capabilities. Now you can think about agents in the similar manner. You deploy these agents on chain, they're self-discoverable, and people can start invoking against them if they so choose to do so. So we brought Icarus as an application that runs on top of Whale Chain to solve the inefficiency problem that exists within the business environments of the enterprise. I know I went on for a long time. I hope it made sense.
That's amazing stuff that you're working on. It brought me flashbacks back to when I worked with Fortune 500 companies. And yeah, there's a lot of inefficiencies. I worked in the domain name industry, Avinash, and IT and marketing and the C-suite would always have disconnects and wouldn't understand each other in terms of any product that flowed into the system and didn't connect well with their sector, right? Tell us, before we jumped on the pod, you said you had a great Genesis story about Weilliptic, maybe even the Icarus. It seems a very interesting names that you chose. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. Weilliptic, Whale is the last name of one of the greatest mathematicians, in my opinion, of last century. His name was Andre Weil. Unfortunately, he passed away early part of this century, but he was a professor at Princeton. And he's a very interesting character, and that's why I kind of gravitated towards him. If I'm belaboring, just feel free to cut me short, all right? But Andre Weil was, he was a French mathematician. He was incarcerated by the French military police during World War II. And if my memory serves me right, he was incarcerated because they thought that he was trying to avoid conscription. And apparently it was norm during those times when you're incarcerated in a French military prison. Every inmate gets stationery material. You get paper and pencils. So he says that the 3 years he spent there, he produces best mathematical works. So just to tell you what it is, he focused on an area of mathematics called algebraic geometry, which basically laid the foundations for what is today modern elliptic curve cryptography. Okay. But the interesting thing is when he got out of prison, he wanted to actually mandate that every budding French mathematician get mandatory prison sentence because it got the best out of him. Right? So he was kind of a character, and he has contributed to a lot of very, very powerful things in the world of algebraic geometry. I think one of the biggest things was there's something known as the Weil-Taniyama-Shimura conjecture, which was actually proven to prove Fermat's last theorem at the late part of last century, which was a 300, 400-year-old unsolved problem in mathematics. So long story short, that's where Weil comes from, and Liptic comes from elliptic, because we built a cryptographically secure protocol that powers our platform, and it's all based on elliptic curve cryptography. So that's where the name comes from.
Avinash
for
might be
Weilliptic.
one of the smartest guys we've ever had on the podcast. We're definitely
Yeah.
learning a ton about some deep, deep levels here, and I absolutely love it. I'm on the website. I'm on the website right now, and I was just kind of taking a look at it here. And what did I want to say? So you're headed to public alpha, it looks like. So what should users expect, and what are they able to do right now?
That's a very good question. What we decided to do, and this is based on some of my learnings from my past startup, I always solved foundational problems. Okay. So everything would, to me, is this is a platform on which you could do something. But what we learned is that selling a platform is a very hard thing to do. Okay. So that was the biggest lesson I took away from my previous startup. Yes, we had a great exit, what have you, but still, there are scar tissue to show to substantiate my claim. And so we decided, okay, this time we're going to build out the platform and we're going to build a solution on top of that platform to showcase what's the realm of possibility here. And also, the solution ought to be potent enough that it could be your first focused go to market strategy. Okay. So that Icarus was an effort in that direction. So Icarus would be the easiest thing for anyone to come and try out. And the other thing that we learned is that what's the easiest way to get rid of any barrier to entry, for people to try things out? How much can you remove the barrier so that people could quickly trial something before they decide, okay, this is the direction in which we are going? And we feel like Icarus is the easiest way to do that because let's say if you are a potential customer who wants to try it out, it takes us 5 minutes to bootstrap you, basically. So that's the way we look at things. And Icarus is going to be the first foray in that direction. We do have ideas to kind of even release a couple more solutions. I'm not going to talk about them now, but we will definitely try to replicate this in a different kind of a domain, just to show that here are two big solutions that can be implemented and powered by this underlying blockchain platform. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I guess I think you've pretty much answered this question kind of through your other descriptions. But do you think the future AI is going to look like one big model or a bunch of smaller specialized agents? How do you vision AI overall?
That's a very, very good question. And I'm almost nervous to answer it because the answer changes on a day-to-day basis.
I could see that.
When we started down this, so let me tell you how we chanced upon AI too. I think that's if you go just Google for blockchain and AI, right? You get a ton of articles, and they've been and there are articles that have been coming out for the past decade. Everyone's saying, hey, blockchain and AI is a great combination. It's a marriage made in heaven. This is how future systems would look, but no one gave any concrete example of what that is or why it should be that way, right? So one of the things that we did is we believe that we have fused the two together by the release of Icarus, right?
Mhm.
So coming to your question about LLMs and whether you need, I think LLMs are going to become commodity if they have not already become. Okay. The analogy I will give you is that LLMs will become like how hardware was. LLMs started off by being what hardware was towards the end of last century, and they will become what hardware is today. If you go back to the 90s, just to be honest, I only spent 2 years in the 90s in the industry, so I'm not that old. But in the 90s, everyone used to come out with their own, HPE would come out with their own server, Dell, IBM, they all came out with their own specific servers and they would pound their chest about what kind of RAID they had, et cetera, et cetera. Look at that industry today. It's all commodity. No one really cares. Everyone powers everything using commodity hardware. I think LLMs will go down that same route. I think they've already started going down that route. Now, the question about how beefy an LLM ought to be, that's I think the jury is still out on that one. I don't know if you can actually draw the line and say, okay, you know what? If I have an LLM that's trained with, say, 20 billion parameters, that's good enough. I don't need the 70 billion, 67 billion, 100 billion parameters powering my LLMs. I really don't know the answer to that. But in my experience, albeit not much, um, a reasonably potent LLM, but what is very important is tool calling capability, because that's what enables you to bring context from external systems to the LLM. And one thing we have learned in the world of AI, context is king. The more effective the context, the more effective the LLM is in giving you responses. So those are the kind of things that one would ought to keep in mind, because if you look at it from a truly business perspective, now I don't care about web search and things like that. Okay. When I say I don't care, it's not like it's not an interesting problem, but a business user doesn't care about that. They care about how to unlock intelligence that's in their proprietary systems. And that's where these kind of capabilities become paramount. So just to give you some concrete numbers, we use LLMs that typically are between 10 to 20 billion in the number of parameters that you use to train them. And we use only open source LLMs. And we choose ones that have very profound tool calling capability, and that works really well. So I think that's where the focus ought to be going forward. Now, I don't know if smaller LLMs are really the key. It depends on what kind of tool calling capability they can have. We have found that too little parameters do not do certain things efficiently. And I think that 10 to 20 or 10 to 30 billion range, I'm willing to stand corrected, but they seem to work really well. And I'm talking about capabilities like, if you give anything in English, can you generate an associated SQL for it using the context I give you, which would be the schema of the database or what have you, if you know what I mean. That makes it really, really powerful. So a lot of unknowns there, a lot of things one would need to figure out. In fact, there's a bunch of stuff that we figured out lately as to how to marry, this concept of RAG with MCPs and how to marry them in order to make them really, really effective. You won't find any documentation or any literature that's out there. That's how nascent this whole space is. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, right now we are at the bleeding edge of AI and blockchain. Finance is leading the way. You said crypto sort of did it a service to blockchain. Right now, everything's flowing in with stable coins. Congress is on board. What's a sector that you see AI and blockchain like Weilliptic really help to shape and evolve besides finance? Because we're all about solving finance right now.
Yes. So some of the big use cases that we are encountering right now is bringing natural language workflows to proprietary systems. Okay. We power it on a blockchain. And why do we do that? Because in order to sound repetitive, you get audit logging for free. You don't want agents running around doing things and you don't have a way to audit them, right? You want to know who, what, when, right? But you also want to do it with some cryptographic capabilities, because you don't want Joe looking at what Brian did unless you have the authority. Or even if you did, you should see some kind of cryptographic gibberish. But we will give you the tools to verify, to make sure that, yes, Brian did do this at this specific time. This is the query he ran, and this is the system he ran it against. Those kind of auditable verification capabilities do not exist in the world of AI in isolation. That's where I believe the marriage with blockchain becomes paramount. Actually, I'm not looking at it from a financial perspective at all. I'm actually doing the opposite. I'm looking at it from a non-financial perspective. And I think the first step in that direction is to really simplify access to systems. At the same time, provide a very, very profound verification, auditability capabilities. I think that's the marriage that's been missing in the industry thus far.
How do you see the technology change the way people interact with technology on a day-to-day basis?
See, that's a fantastic question because my answer might be a bit controversial. Um, so, a lot of people talk about wipe coding, and you see all these articles come up about, hey, you can fire all your developers and you can have AI do this. I think that's like getting way ahead of oneself. Okay. Without naming the specific products that are out there, and there are not a whole lot. So you can put all of them in this category. Uh, there are products that even give you, like you can go and ask it, hey, can you write the code for me in Rust to do this? The chances are you get a bunch of code that looks correct, but I've had this experience where it doesn't even compile. Okay. Now, if it doesn't even compile, I'm going to spend a ton of work trying to make it work to just compile. Forget the correctness, right? Just to compile. In my experience, I have seen for the kind of systems that I build, I'm better off writing it on my own because I shrink the time much better than what the LLM does for me. Now, on the flip side, there are simple things that it does well, right? If you write simple utility stuff, you want to write some code, yes, you should use it because it makes one more efficient. But it's a far cry from, fire all your developers and just let the LLM write the application for you. Simple stuff it might probably do, but if there is a modicum of complexity, it just falls flat,
Yeah.
in my experience.
Yeah, I agree with you in a lot of different ways how that definitely seems to be very true. Do you think they're going to develop? Because we've seen these LLMs, we've seen these chatbots, we've seen them change so much over the past just couple months to couple weeks. Do you think we'll get there in the near future?
I think so. And the reason I say that is the following. See, when you think of, I'm going to call this LLM, but it's actually more than just an LLM. Okay. But just let's go with the terminology of an LLM.
Yeah.
What do you actually want it to do? You want it to replace the human in the loop. Okay. Now, let's say I hire you because you are a SQL expert. Okay. You can write complicated SQL, you have the background to do so. But if I come to you and I tell you, hey, I need you to write this SQL that fetches this data for me, and here is the schema of my database. Okay. But I don't give you any metadata about the SQL, about the schema. Like I don't tell you what is in this table, what kind of data is in this table, what kind of data is in the other table, how are they related to each other. If I don't give you that, your expertise is useless. You're going to struggle because you don't know what is the metadata associated with them, right? If I'm replacing you with an LLM, it just makes natural sense that the LLM also has to have the same context that I need to give you, right? That's what you're intending to do. So context becomes king. So I guess over time, this intelligence can be developed where you probably get to a point where it's getting closer and closer to like generating stuff for you. See, I think you don't want to conflate the generation speed and the correctness. Right? I can generate a bunch of garbage. You might not be able to tap as fast as what the LLM probably generates, but how correct is it? That it's very hard to put a timeline on it. I believe we can get there, but when? That's anyone's guess. But we're definitely not there now. That's a guarantee. Because I've had that experience. If I've had that experience, I'm sure there are hundreds of people out there who have had it.
Yeah, we just had it. We pronounced the company name wrong. Apologies, but that was through
Yeah, no
ChatGPT.
Truth be told, he is a French guy. I don't know if I'm saying it right. In the mathematical community, they all refer to it as whale, whale, whale. But I don't know what Andre Whale, how he pronounces his name.
That's actually that's actually a pretty good point when you think about it. What are the types of businesses or users that you want to attract over to Weilliptic?
It's a very good question. Right now, we have made it in order to make our go-to-market strategy very focused and very straightforward. And that's why we went down this path of let's just focus on bringing natural language workflows, right? Any system that exposes an API, that's what we want to drive. So who would we go after? Any enterprise grade system, their customers, we would like to go after them. For example, Snowflake customers, Salesforce customers, SAP customers, perhaps even Oracle customers, right? Just write natural language and get information out of these systems. That's our initial GDM kind of strategy at this point. But to answer a question that Joe had asked me a few minutes back about finance, and to touch upon a little bit on the Genius Act that the Trump administration passed, I think the future is all going to be stable coins. Okay, but I think we are going to live in I think we have ushered in a geopolitical environment where you're going to have stable coins that are backed by a wide variety of fiat currencies. Okay. Yes, we live in the US, so obviously backing it with US Treasury bills, that's a no-brainer. And I think we will look at that very seriously because we have the fundamental infrastructure to do that, right? That's what we are, globally distributed blockchain. And of course, we also have a wallet that's very easy to pick from the Chrome store, and that does everything that any traditional crypto wallet does. So we have all the underpinnings to kind of offer that. And I'm going to leave that at that. You could also think of, and these constructs, they seem new, but they actually are not. And I figured this out about a year or so ago. Are you guys familiar with what is called SDR? It stands for, I think it stands for special drawing rights. It's a financial construct that is available with the IMF. Okay, it's akin to a token, but it's backed by a basket of currencies, and the currencies are the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the Chinese yuan, and there are, I think, 2 other countries in there. So it's backed by that. So you could think of that as a stable coin backed by fiat currency, but not by an individual currency, but a basket of currencies. So these are all things that could also come in vogue in the very near future. And we definitely have our eye on that ball.
Yeah, I mean, the Genius Act and the Clarity Act were just huge bills that were passed in the United States just recently. I think they almost went under, not underreported, like just under the radar, I should say, to the normal person. Like you and I and Joe, and of course we were like, this is huge news. But it does feel like it went a little under the radar. I mean, even as of today, I'm looking at it right now. Wyoming's the first U.S. state to launch its own stable coin.
There you go. I mean, I think that's the way the world is headed, and that's why. And also, if you think about how financial systems have operated thus far, when you have settlements of T+1, T+2, T+3, I mean, we live in a world where people are going chat speed or internet speed. You can't have T+1, T+2, and things shut down during the weekends, during the holidays. That's just unacceptable in the current situation, right? I mean, you want things operating 24/7. So that's probably another major motivation to start moving towards these kind of technologies. And the administration has just made it legally very, very easy for you to pursue that.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot more builders. We're seeing a lot more interest in the entire space. It's an exciting time. Just kind of wrapping up with some of my final questions. What's success look like, let's say, over the next couple of years, 2 to 3 years for Weilliptic?
I see how you have kept the hardest questions towards the end.
Well, I mean, I want to know what our goals here are.
That's a very good question, actually. I think when I did my first company, I didn't even know. Everyone goes through the motions of wanting to start a company, and one of the metrics that people measure is money, right? But
Yeah.
truth be told, that was never a motivation for me. I mean, not to say that I'm a monk. I'm not going to leave money on the table. That's not what I'm saying. But one of the ways I answered this question when I initially founded Hedwig, someone asked me, "What is success to you?" And I was like, anyone who works with me, worst case scenario for me would be if I could put $1 million in their pocket. Now you back calculate from there, you can arrive at a number that tells you, hey, worst case scenario, that would be a good exit for me. And I think I more or less accomplished that. But this time around, it's more about I believe we are in a very, very interesting time, technologically speaking. And I think if I am able to deliver this confluence of blockchain and AI and really deliver it as a platform that enables a lot of things in enterprise settings, uh, I think that would be extremely satisfying for me personally. And if I'm able to deliver that, the financial aspects will automatically be taken care of. So I don't even want to think about that. It's not about me, it's more for the employees who work with me. But I think the confluence of these two technologies and solving problems in ways that people have only imagined, I think would be extremely satisfying.
Yeah, I mean I mean you definitely hit the nail on the head. You know, if you build it, the money's going to definitely flow in and come. And if you build the right product with the right services, with the right attention, that's a great way to go about it. And a lot of founders don't go about it that right way. They see dollar signs and they're just like, how do I get my next buyout? And I understand that, but I don't think they're going to ship the same type of quality product.
Agreed. And philosophically speaking, I tell my son this all the time. Money is the only artifact that you never chase. The more you chase it, the more you're going to find it. It has to find its way to you. Okay. So, and I really believe that. And the other thing that I always say is that I don't look at, see, tomorrow my company could crash and burn, right? We don't have control over destiny. There are things that are outside of your control that can lead to the demise of the company. The one thing I truly believe in is that anyone who is successful would have embraced the kind of design paradigms and architectural paradigms that we have embraced. That much I am very confident in, if
Makes
that
it
makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Do you think AI is going to be more disruptive than what the internet has done?
Well, I think it's very hard to say because I think the internet changed the lives of a lot of people, especially, what people don't
Everything, yeah.
appreciate is, hey, if you sit in the Western world, you don't get to appreciate it as much as if you go to other parts of the world where it's really dramatically changed the lives of people, right? And I think even though I'm tempted to say yes, I would say it would be somewhere between how search changed our lives and in between how internet changed your lives. That would be the lowest common denominator to explain how AI would be impactful on society, if that makes sense to you.
No, it's a great question. Yeah, I didn't really ever think about it that way outside of my own little bubble in the United States here and how the internet's changed my life from like whenever I was a kid to where it is now. You know, it would be hard to even grasp how the world would look. But then when you look outside of our borders and how it's impacted so many people across the globe in so many positive ways, it's actually it just didn't make their life easier. It was literally a means for survival in a lot of ways.
Exactly, and especially if you look at say digital payments, for instance, right? We don't use that much here. That's because we have been using credit cards for a long period of time, right? But if you go to India, for instance, when I go to India, I can have the money that I want, but I feel handicapped because the way everything is done is through payments on mobile. And unless you're wired into that system, you can have vegetable vendors on the street have a QR code that you scan and you pay them. Right? They've made it that simple. It's impacted their lives in a big way. It's forced them to move their money into bank accounts. Now everyone has bank accounts. And it also helps the country now track who comes into the taxable ecosystem, you know?
Hmm.
So it helps in ways that people typically don't even think about. And you don't realize that unless you go there and you witness that. And I'm a case in point. I go back there every time. I always have to take one of my uncles with me so that payments can be done because I am very lazy to set something up on my mobile just for that particular purpose.
Avinash, you're a wealth of knowledge. You're absolutely a brilliant individual. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I want to give you an opportunity for our audience to learn more about you and obviously your platform.
No, thank you so much. I'm really flattered. For anyone who's out there, I believe we have built something that can be very impactful. And anyone who wants to I think the way to start is to start with Icarus. And if you want to go in a bit deeper, we have publicly available documentation on how you can build applications and deploy it on our platform. I am always reachable. I live and breathe this stuff. DM me on LinkedIn, and I'll be more than happy to help out.
All right, I'm going to put all those links down below so anybody in the audience who wants to learn more, you can definitely check it out. Thank you again for joining the podcast today.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot, Joe.